Alrighty. So meanwhile, Facebook and Twitter appearing on the Hill, and you can see the different agendas of the Republicans and Democrats when it comes to Facebook and Twitter. Republicans are saying, you guys really should allow people to speak their minds on your platforms. I mean, this is what your platforms were created for. And Democrats are like, you know what you should really do? You should use your massive social media power to ensure that no one is ever able to express their opinion if we don't like their opinion. It's incredibly obvious that Democrats are seeking to enjoin conservatives from expressing their opinion or disseminating information they don't like. So Richard Blumenthal, idiot senator from Connecticut, he actually demanded that Mark Zuckerberg ban Steve Bannon. And Zuckerberg's like, do you have like grounds for banning Steve Bannon? And Blumenthal's like, I don't like him. We're not going to, like, what if we just don't let him on the system? That'd be great. Democrats see social media as a way of quashing their opposition, and they are angry that places like Facebook allow their opposition to exist. So they've made it impossible for any Republican, the media have made it impossible for any open Republican to work at a mainstream publication. And then when you form a different kind of publication like Daily Wire and you disseminate your information through social media like Twitter or Facebook, Democrats are like, you know, it'd be great if we shut that down too. Here's Richard Blumenthal trying to do this yesterday.
How many times has Steve Bannon allowed the call for the murder of government officials before Facebook suspends his account?
Senator, as you say, the content in question did violate our policies and we took it down.
Will you commit to taking down that account, Steve Bannon's account?
Senator, no, that's not what our policies would suggest that we should do.
Again, Zuckerberg at least is being consistent there. You can see how he's getting browbeaten by members of the Democratic Party, which is the great irony here. What you are seeing from Facebook's internals, what you're seeing from the leaked reports about what's going on inside Facebook, is that Facebook is being bullied by the left to comply with the left in the assumption that people on the right are going to be in favor of free speech and free enterprise and defend them even as they quash speech from the right. It ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. Anyway, Chris Coons from Delaware, right? He does the same thing. He says, I want Facebook and I want Twitter to censor climate denialism. He says, can you guys please, shut down anybody's ability to speak about their doubts about climate change solutions proposed by the left? The Democrats are all in favor of censorship. You think these are your free speech protectors? Good luck.
You do, Mr. Dorsey, have policies against deep fakes or manipulated media, against COVID-19 misinformation, against things that violate civic integrity, but you don't have a standalone climate change misinformation policy. I'd urge you to reconsider that, because helping to disseminate climate denialism, in my view, further facilitates and accelerates one of the greatest existential threats to our world.
Okay, I mean, this is crazy. So he's saying that if you don't agree with my perspective on climate change, I want woke Rasputin over here, Jack Dorsey, to actually stop that information from being disseminated. The Democrats are very clear in what they want here. The Democrats are very clear. They want a single-party system, a single party dominating your methods of informational dissemination. This is how they got Joe Biden elected. This is what they hope to do. They hope to use social media as a weapon to siphon off all of the possible information they don't like and make it go away, disappear into the ether. Democrats cannot be trusted with free speech principles. If they had their way, you would not be able to listen to shows like this one. And you're going to see this weaponized, not just by social media companies. You're going to see it weaponized by credit card companies. There will come a point here. Here's my prediction. There will come a point at which credit card companies, under pressure from woke staffers and from members of Democratic Congress, decide that they are simply not going to allow you to charge on your credit card anything they don't like. So if you decide that you're going to subscribe to Daily Wire, there will come a point where your credit card company says you can't because they're conservative and we don't like that. Or you want to buy a gun with your credit card. A credit card company will say, nope, you can't do that. You can't use your charge card for that. And the predictable result of that will be that there will be right-wing credit cards and left-wing credit cards. The left is so determined to wish everybody they don't like out into the cornfield, all they're going to do is create entire new right-wing ecosystems. That's all that's going to happen. There will be two parallel systems. You'll only be able to go to the right-wing restaurant or the left-wing restaurant. You'll only be able to go to the right-wing credit card or the left-wing credit card. You're only going to be able to go over to Parler because Twitter is going to ban you, right? I mean, this is the way that the left wants things to be. And then they complain that those alternative systems even exist, right? They complain that Parler is even a thing. Right? They're whining about how so many people are joining Parler. Yes, it turns out when you weaponize a social media company against people you disagree with, those people will leave and go find an alternative method of talking with one another. Mazie Hirono, the stupidest person in the United States Senate, she is a complete and utter dud intellectually. The senator from Hawaii, she slammed Facebook. Why? Because they allowed the Daily Caller fact-checking site to be included in their fact-checkers. Now, as I have mentioned, when it comes to social media do something deeply corrupt. They outsource all of their political predilections to the fact-checkers. So what they do is they go to PolitiFact or Snopes or factcheck.org, all left-wing sites, the Washington Post fact checker, all left-wing sites who very often are not even checking facts. Very often these fact checks will say things like, well, sure, what the Republican was saying here was factually true, but it backs a false narrative. Right? And then they will use that as a rationale for downgrading particular news sites. So we've had this experience with, for example, there's a site called NewsGuard. NewsGuard has downgraded our site, not because what we report is false, but we report things that are mistaken sometimes, just like CNN does. They've downgraded us because we are openly an opinion site that also does news reporting. So what they do, these social media companies, they outsource to places like NewsGuard to decide whether an outlet is good or not. And naturally, NewsGuard decides that left-wing outlets and establishment media outlets, those are good, and everybody on the right is bad. Okay, so they're doing the same thing with the fact checkers. Facebook actually does allow one, quote-unquote, right-wing fact checker, that'd be the Daily Caller. Mazie Hirono's like, well, we shouldn't allow that. There shouldn't be any fact checkers on the right. And in fact, the Daily Caller is a white supremacist site, which of course the Daily Caller is not, but Mazie Hirono is a complete moron. So here she is.
Early in 2019, Facebook selected the Daily Caller, another site with white nationalist ties, to be one of its third-party fact checkers. And Mr. Zuckerberg, I'm really wondering at what point you will stop giving in to baseless claims of anti-conservative bias and start exercising your control over Facebook to stop driving division and actually, to quote you, build community and bring the world closer together, end quote, as you claim is Facebook's mission.
It's ridiculous. So they want to make sure that all the fact checkers are left-wing fact checkers so that they can launder their left-wing views through the fact checkers and then just say, hey, look, the fact checkers say the site's bad, so we're just not going to allow the site anymore. How ridiculous is Mazie Hirono? She cited Media Matters to suggest that Facebook and Twitter are not biased against conservatives. Media Matters. Okay, Media Matters is a political action organization started by Hillary Clinton and David Brock with the explicit design of protecting the Clintons. It is an organization that dedicates its time to listening to shows like this one, clipping things out of context, and then attempting to make them trend via echo chamber on Twitter so they can go after advertisers. They're a left-wing front group. Okay, they've always been a left-wing group. The attempt to use Media Matters as some sort of objective news verifier when it comes to Facebook and Twitter, like, hey, if Media Matters says that Facebook and Twitter aren't biased against conservatives, well, then it must be true. Okay, that's legitimately like me citing the Epoch Times to the idea that left-wingers never experience hardship in the United States. Like, what are you talking about? That's an overtly partisan group. It's not like they make any bones about it. Here's Mazie Hirono being an idiot, as she is wont to do.
Everyone who has systematically looked at the content of social media, from Media Matters to the Cato Institute to former Republican Senator John Kyle, has found absolutely no evidence of anti-conservative bias. And data from CrowdTangle show that far-right content from the likes of Fox News, Ben Shapiro, David Bongino dominates the daily top 10 most engaged pages on Facebook.
Okay, well, the reason that we dominate on Facebook is because there are like three of us. If you actually look at the sites that have the most traffic via Facebook, it is at least mostly establishment media sites, right? It is mainstream media sites. That is what they are, right? They get a lot of their traffic from Facebook. They spend millions of dollars on Facebook every month. And the idea that right-wingers are not biased against on Facebook, I can tell you this. You can look at the quote-unquote top 10 in terms of reach. The reach on my page has been artificially suppressed over the last 2 months. Okay, this is perfectly clear. We can see it happening in real time. And the reason it was suppressed is because people like Mazie Hirono and Kevin Roose decided they were going to yell at Facebook until they suppressed that. So the people who have not yet been suppressed are people like Dan Bongino, right? Dan knows that it's coming for him too, which is why he has started alternative social media sites. But this is the whole point. The whole point is that the Democratic left does not want you to be able to consume information that you are interested in consuming. And the woke staffers inside these various organizations are all for it. They're all for the use of these social media platforms as ways to cram down the left-wing point of view. Right? This is a point that Ted Cruz made to Jack Dorsey because Dorsey has been labeling things misinformation on voter fraud. So Cruz was like, so are you an expert on voter fraud? Why is it that only some posts get labeled misinformation on voter fraud and not others?
Does voter fraud exist?
I don't know for certain.
Are you an expert in voter fraud?
No, I'm not.
Well, why then is Twitter right now putting purported warnings on virtually any statement about voter fraud?
We're simply linking to a broader conversation so that people have more information.
No, you're not. You put up a page that says, quote, voter fraud of any kind is exceedingly rare in the United States. That's not linking to a broader conversation. That's taking a disputed policy position, and you're a publisher when you're doing that.
Okay, so Ted is exactly right about this. Of course, Senator Cruz, when he says that you guys are taking a position, as I said, yesterday, my business partner tweeted out something overtly false about Stacey Abrams being governor of Georgia, not flagged by Twitter. If you say that there's widespread voter fraud in the United States, that is flagged as false by Twitter. So Twitter obviously has its own point of view on things. They're entitled to that, but let's not pretend that they are some sort of neutral arbiter of information. Did you know that every like on this video creates one additional leftist tier? Don't ask me why. That's called science. To take advantage of this amazing opportunity, hit the like button.